Hello and thank you for joining me on the Wow Embossing channel. My name is Sasha Reade and tonight I've got a really fun tutorial for you. Again, mixing our embossing powder colors together and creating this kind of explosion card effect. I'm going to be using the Sweetie Jar Trio collection, which is the Marshmallow Fizz, Plum Fizz and Sherbet Fizz, as well as in the Navy, which is a dark blue color. So those are the embossing powders there I've got on the screen. I'm also using a stamp set from Creative Expressions, which we are going to use to create a really fun focal point on our card with. So I'm lining up my card base into my stamp platform and I'm getting out my stamp, which I'm going to stamp on top of my card base just as is in some black ink, some Onyx black VersaFine ink, which is a pigment ink and is great for heat embossing as well. So I'm going to line that up. I'm making sure that I'm putting my card in a very specific spot, and I will put a piece of cardstock right back in that specific spot again later. So it's really important to use a stamp platform so that you can kind of double or triple stamp with this technique. Now I'm using my Onyx black ink and I'm going to just ink up my image and stamp it directly down onto the front of my card base. So this is a one layer card if you don't add any sentiment embellishments, which I do add at the end, but you can keep it a one layer card because we are stamping directly onto the card base. So I'm giving it a couple stamps to make sure it's nice and clear and crisp. Then I'm going to grab some circle dies. These ones are the nesting dies from scrapbook.com, and I'm grabbing the circle that's closest to the size of the circle in my stamped image. Now if you watched my YouTube channel, Sasha Reade, last week, I did another technique with this same stamp set, but I showed you how you can make your own version using whatever stamps you've got. So if you haven't got this stamp to hand and you want to create something very similar, then pop over to my channel and watch that video and you can see how you can make this stamp essentially yourself. Now this is a scrap bit of A6 cardstock. This is just plain, really cheap cardstock, very thin cardstock, and I'm going to stamp the image again. I've lined the cardstock up exactly where I put my card base, and I don't need it to be perfect because all I'm going to do is use it as a template. So I'm going to take my die and I'm going to cut out that circle, essentially creating a mask of the exact same image as my card base to go over top of it. Now to make sure that my mask doesn't go shifting or moving about anywhere while I'm doing my next part of my technique, I'm just going to stick it on top of my card. So my mask is exactly the same size as my card base, as I mentioned, so I can just take a little bit of low tack tape and adhere it on. This is mint tape from scrapbook.com, which is a great low tack tape. It's basically the same as post-it notes, but in like a tape form. So it's quite handy if you need to mask off an area or if you want to hold something lightly onto something else and you don't want the cardstock ripping. Once I've got that in place, I can take my embossing pad and I'm just going to swipe and dab all over that center bit. So exactly where the mask is open, I'm going to cover in sticky embossing ink. Then this is a little bit wasteful, so you could tip off your embossing powders as you go. I'm trying very carefully here to just put a little bit of embossing powder down so I'm not wasting much. And I'm wanting to get a really nice, thick, decent coverage so I don't have to do this again. Hence why I'm not dusting it off in between. When I'm done, I'm giving it a little firm pat with my finger and kind of spreading it out, making sure there's absolutely no empty spaces. Then I'm going to tip off that excess, and it really isn't much that I'm tipping off. It's quite a small amount, but it's meant that I got really good coverage. Then I can remove my mask and just tidy up underneath. It's a nice big round shape, so there's no intricate tidying up to be done. I can just take a big paintbrush or a small paintbrush and dust off any excess that's snuck through underneath. I'm going to take my Wow Heat tool and I'm going to heat up my whole entire area that we've just put embossing powder down on, and it's going to nicely melt and kind of merge together a little bit. And make sure you're tipping it on an angle when you're doing it every so often, just to make sure you've got every little area embossed, or heated, sorry, and melted. Once that's all done, we can go ahead and stamp it again. I'm going to stamp it in the exact same place I stamped it before, and I'm going to ink it up with my black ink again and push that down so that I can kind of get a bit more of a crisp black image over top of the stamped image. Now you could use black embossing powder here. I was a bit worried it might kind of melt too much into my already embossed area, so I'm using some clear embossing powder and black ink. This also means that if my embossed area is still a little bit tacky, I won't notice, or no one will notice, that I've put the embossing powder on there because it's clear, so it'll just melt into that background. So I'm just kind of highlighting the areas I stamped again. And now you can see that image a little bit more clearly, and the whole entire stamped image is nice and beautiful and glossy. Now off screen I went ahead and added on some sentiments. I've got happy and birthday there. I added those to the top of my card just with a bit of liquid adhesive underneath. And then to finish it off, I'm going to add some flat back gems. And so I just put down a little bit of glue, use my homemade DIY pick me up tool, which happens to be blue tack on the end of a chopstick. And then I can pick up my gems and stick them right down onto my little gluey blobs. And that is our card for tonight. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you do have a go with making something like this. It's quite fun to blend and mix your embossing powders together, especially when they come in a trio. The trios are quite clever because they do coordinate really nicely and they look really beautiful when you put them together. So it's kind of a no-brainer and makes this technique really easy and really beautiful. I hope you had a good time with me today creating this card. All the links for the products still available will be down in the description box for you, as well as a link to my YouTube channel, as well as all of the useful WOW links like their blog and their website. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for WOW and like this video. Take care. Bye.